Hi, this video is by George Lackig.
The one and only.
Yeah, it's a bit crazy, but if you watch until the end, you can see me give you a tip on outdoor painting.
First we're going to crack this open. Hello and welcome. I am George Lackig. Last weekend I had a surprise. Someone had found one of my videos and made a video about it. That's right, folks, a video about me. I am famous now.
I found the video of a guy lying in the grass at his backyard and painting a vintage steel bike and that looked so funny. I can't wait to show you this video. So let's open a German fast browser and let's check if George, his name is George, can paint a steel bike with a proper paint job.
Perhaps some of you recognize this guy. I certainly did. It's Martin Grey. I've seen some of his videos and he's inspired me. He's the king when it comes to painting bicycles. I'm not so sure of his choice of beverage though.
You can totally change the appearance of your bike by repainting it.
It's not as easy as it sounds.
I'll show you how it's done. My name is George Lackig, and I am
The one and only.
The one and only George. Yes, I'm the one and only Martin.
Yes, you are, and you're also the first to ever make a video about me. I'm awarding you with your own honorable one and only badge.
I'm absolutely interested, George, if you are able to do a paint job I like.
Expert eyes on an amateur paint job. What could possibly go wrong? Uh-oh, I thought, this guy is going to tear me apart. I must admit that I don't come close to the professionalism he's displayed over and over.
If you ask yourself what's that green water in the bottle, that's German fast browser and the taste is wood rough. That's what we drink in Germany. It's made by my local brewery and I like it as much as painting bikes because I like the color. The taste is horrible, but the color is nice.
Haha, I'm having a Negra Modelo made by a Mexican brewery. The taste is nice, but the color is horrible. We could be brothers, Martin.
I'm using these sanding sponges. I also used the fire pit before.
What did you do? You used the fire pit? George, you doesn't use the fire pit.
Yep.
You put your bike into the fire pit. No. You put it in the fire pit? George, no, you didn't put your bike in the fire pit. Did you really put it in the fire pit? That's what you shouldn't do with a vintage steel bike, because vintage steel bikes are fire braced. That means they are made with fire and a torch like this. And guess what happens if you put such a frame into the fire? Yes, it will fall apart, and that's what you shouldn't do, George.
You're right, Martin. It was a stupid idea and I probably got lucky. I hadn't even considered the deformation this could cause.
It kind of works, but it really oxidizes the metal too, so I don't know.
It not only oxidizes the metal, it also cracks the metal and it will bend all the way everywhere because these tubes are sometimes very thin.
As for the brazing, I don't think I left it in long enough to affect that. It would take a lot of heat. Some of the paint was easier to scrape off after the fire.
And that's not what I can recommend. Don't put your bike into a fire pit or use fire to remove the color. I recommend Media Blast.
I can only agree. If you have access to media or sandblast, go for it. The stripping part is by far the worst.
Because that's the safest way and the best and fastest way to strip the frame. If you have a lot of time and if you are a hobby painter, you can use also these sponges or wet sanding paper, but not on steel frames. Use dry sanding paper on steel frames. That is what I do every time. I have a stripping video in the corner if you want to see how to strip a frame by hand.
Big dreams.
However, I'm not that well equipped and wanted to show how I can still do a decent paint job anyways.
But never use fire on these vintage steel frames.
Big dreams.
Big dreams, George, but dreaming is a good thing and gives you hope and inspiration.
Just look at the jewelry I got for the project. Big money on eBay.
These cranks laying by are the inspiration to sand down hours for hours.
Now I was gonna build a 1980s road bike, a mean, lean, and fast one.
Mean and lean, George. Yeah.
I love riding those things. That's why I build them.
Looks professional-like.
Did I hear a compliment?
Have you seen his technique? He used a little strip and folded it around, and then he can sand the frame like this, the tubes, and that's an easy way to sand down a steel frame.
It's still a workout. If you can do the blasting and spend the time riding your bike, go for it.
So if you want to be on the safe side of painter's life, I can also recommend to remove all of the color, every single bit.
You mean paint, right? And the primer too.
I discovered my wire brush for these hard-to-reach corners for the dropouts. See?
Yes, you can use a wire brush for the dropouts if you have a steel frame. Don't do it on an aluminum frame or a carbon frame. You will ruin the surface. You will destroy the carbon, and the aluminum is too soft. It's a soft metal.
This is an important point. I'm an old fart and all my bikes are steel. Steel is real.
I can see also some rust. Oh, maybe it's a good idea to use some rust remover before you start painting, because all these little spots will come back. Can you see these brown points? If you want to go professional, you have to remove them.
And so I did, manually. It was a lot of work.
Maybe later on today I can wipe the frame with alcohol, make sure there's no contamination on the surface, and then put some primer on it.
Yes, that's right. What he's doing is right. Use alcohol to clean the frame. Never use water. It will rust immediately if you have a steel frame. George does it right.
Once that is done, I would leave the frame alone for at least a full day and then sand it with 1500 grit sandpaper, very lightly. And I found on my last repaint, that was the secret to ending up with a really nice paint job.
Yes, I recommend also sanding the primer, because if you want to go high quality, you need an absolutely even and smooth surface, and you can reach only this when sanding the primer. You can do also a wet on wet paint job.
I think I tried that once. Get the timing wrong and it doesn't work.
But if you are not a pro, I don't recommend a wet on wet paint job. I recommend a curing time and sanding the primer after the application.
I learned this the hard way.
This time I've got yellow engine enamel for the frame. I will not put any clear coat on there. I find it is much easier, much more simple just to go with a one coat finish. It's also easier to touch up.
Oh, I can tell you, clear coat is a good thing. It's a protection layer. And all my professional paint jobs have only a base coat, that's the color, and every time a clear coat over the base coat, that gives extra protection. It's not so easy for DIY painters, but if you want to do a single color, it's also possible. So the color is also the lacquer, and that seems what George likes to do on his frame.
Yes, you're right. This bike will never be a showpiece. I want to ride it, and the paint is primarily for protecting the metal while also looking good.
And if you have a color which is the lacquer, you have to prepare the color by sanding, by wet sanding, because if you apply a clear coat on top, you have no bond in between the color and the clear coat. So you have to decide if you want to use a base coat which is able or which is made for clear coat, or if you use a color which is also the coat, the last coat, you have to sand it with maybe 1200 grit wet sanding paper, and then you can apply the clear coat. If you don't do so, the clear coat can peel off.
That's well explained right there. One thing I like is when clear coat is applied over the decals. That's for a future project, maybe.
But I like that. It's a lot of effort he puts in this frame.
I love my bikes.
Check this, all the lugs are clean. That's absolutely perfect. He put a lot of effort and time in this frame. Absolutely perfect preparation, that's what I like. The dropouts, I can see some red. George, there's an area you had to sand down. But that's okay. That's okay for this frame.
Well, that's where the axle goes.
Can you see that? The brake cleaner is not good for your hands. It dries the hands, and you should wear gloves when working with alcohol or brake cleaner or any of these solvents.
Yes, wear gloves. I should have too, especially when presenting this to an audience. It's about protecting your good health.
And you can also make sure that you don't touch the frame with your bare hands. Your hands are greasy, you have grease on your hands, and you will transfer it onto the frame. So when you start painting, wear gloves. That's what a pro would do.
I might add that after cleaning, I only touch my frame with clean rags or shop towels.
What I recommend for a high quality paint job is a 2-component system. It costs much more and it prevents your steel frame perfect from rusting, and it gives an absolutely hard surface.
It's a good primer. See, it's Dupli-Color Automotive.
I will link you also the Dupli-Color primer if I find it, so you can use the same color George uses in his video.
Thanks, man. In Canada, you'll find it at Canadian Tire.
As it seems, George, your lawn needs a new haircut. Where's your lawnmower?
Hey, I cut my grass twice last summer.
And guys, what I can tell you is the paint stand is horrible. It's the height of the paint stand is absolutely horrible. You will see it later. So,
Yo, it's a broomstick, Martin. No paint stand in my backyard yet. It's a frickin' broomstick. Someday, I'll build a real one.
build yourself a little more comfortable paint stand.
I'll be working on it, Martin.
The bike should be in the height of your nipples. Check my videos. That's my perfect height, and that's a comfortable height. But let's see what George does with his paint stand.
Put a second coat on, and that should be good enough. It's not good to breathe.
If you use spray can primers, they are very thin, not like professional primers, so I recommend also maybe 3 layers, 2 to 3 layers a minimum, so you have a good surface, and you need the surface and a lot of material because you'll have to sand it down a little bit if you want to flatten it, so apply maybe 2 to 3 layers of primer.
That makes sense. Don't skimp on primer.
He's lying in the grass, and check out how he's holding the can.
Glad you're having fun.
No, it's the can with a thumb. I've never seen that before. George, that's the trigger finger, and it's called trigger finger because to push the trigger, but maybe it's hard to push it all the time, and he uses the thumb technique, and here I will try it as well.
Thumb is strong and works good.
Up and down, up and down, up and down, give a thumb up, give a thumb down, give a thumb up, give a thumb down.
However, there's a product called Can Gun. Link in the description.
He's lying in the grass. That's such a nice picture. Imagine George has a bikini on and you're in the South Seas and drinking some sex on the beach or coconut kiss. That's what I like.
You're asking for it, buddy.
1 point. That's not the right mask. Buy yourself a proper paint mask with minimum an A1 filter. That's a filter which can filter the chemicals. He has only a dust mask, and I can't recommend to paint with such a mask. Buy yourself a proper paint mask when you paint, also with spray cans.
Okay, fair critique.
Safety first. So George, that's not good. Buy yourself a spray mask next time.
Another point.
If you paint outside, make sure there's nice weather.
Watch the weather, or
if it starts to rain, you ruin the paint job. You get drips in the color. The rain will drip the color, and that's a problem.
that sounds horrible. I guess I got lucky.
And if you paint outside, all the flies like color. He will paint on a yellow color, and flies like light colors, like yellow, like red, and you will have hundreds of flies into the wet paint, and that's horrible.
Our flies are too smart. They're all in the compost.
I recommend also maybe 12 to 24 hours depending on your primer minimum curing time. Then you can go ahead with sanding.
See, what I do is I use this sandpaper. This one is 1500 grit, This is almost a little bit too fine. The other one in the water there is 600. The point is just to get the glaze off the primer so that it's more tacky.
Yes, that's right. If you sand the primer, you get a tacky surface for the next layers. I recommend an 800 grit.
800. Thanks for the tip. Next time.
You don't want the paint to flake off in big chunks. That's what happened to me on previous.
That green stuff might be kryptonite. Bad for your health. Even Superman gets sick from it.
I pay a lot more attention to the prep work now, and it doesn't matter how long it's going to take me, it's going to get done right.
Yes, to all the new painters out there, that's what the pro does, sanding hours for hours. It's not applying color. Applying color is fun, yeah, but if you think that's painting, that's not the truth. The truth of painting is sanding.
Agreed.
So after this is painted, it will be left alone for a minimum of a week, perhaps longer than that.
That's right, if you use a one component system, it takes a long time to cure. He will wait a week, that's a good time spot. I recommend also maybe 1 to 2 weeks in a warm room. 20 degrees Celsius, I'm not sure what's in Fahrenheit.
20 degrees is about 70 Fahrenheit. We use Celsius in Canada.
Put it maybe in your basement in a warm room for drying before you put all the bikes or all the parts on the bike.
In the summer, the outdoor shed is okay. My basement is not well enough ventilated. Paint smells.
To really be sure that there's no contaminants on the frame, I'll be using methyl
Be careful
hydrate.
using that. In some cases you can remove the primer using methanol or methyl hydrate because that's a one component primer and that's a risk. What I can recommend, he uses brake cleaner before.
I just learned something. I actually thought the brake cleaner was more aggressive. Thanks for that.
Walls inside there that makes
Is that George on his shirt? Check his shirt. That's George or not?
Yes, it's me. On the recent mission to Mars. Atmospheric pressure is low on Mars, so my eyes are distorted.
Check George, he's such a supermodel lying in the grass. Absolutely funny. Yeah.
I don't recall ever being called a supermodel before.
Next time, build a comfortable paint stand. Oh man, bikini painting. That's what I want to see, George.
I'll do the bikini.
If you want to do a high quality paint job, it's also important to paint underneath the tubes, and it seems very difficult to do with such a low paint stand. And listen to my words, if you paint outside, the flies will love this color, this bright yellow. They think they are flowers, that the frame is a flower, and they will sit on top of the fresh color, and you have hundreds of flies in your paint job.
Pick your spot and pick your day. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
See, this is the frame, the way it looks right now.
Looks not so bad. Shiny, glossy, and that's what you, if you put effort in your frame, that's the result. That's all the effort in sanding why it's so glossy. It's not application of color, it's the sanding process. George, that's a good job. I like it. Thumbs up.
Well, Martin, coming from you, this means a lot.
That's perfect. Perfect, George. So to all the painting kids outside, now you have seen what it takes to paint a frame properly. It takes hours of sanding, maybe days, and if you put a lot of effort in your paint job, you can do the same like George. Don't put your frames into the fire pit. I got goosebumps. Can you see that? I have goosebumps only talking about the fire pit and a frame in a fire pit. But thanks for watching. Thanks, George, for amusing me. I had a lot of fun. And if you want to see professional paint job, check my channel, check my other videos. Goodbye.
You've heard him, and he's not kidding. Martin does amazing work. I will also post a link to his website below. And Martin, thanks for your good work. You know, I grew up in Germany, and I'm overdue for a visit. Don't be surprised if I knock on your door someday.
But thanks for watching. Thanks, George.
And now, for those of you who are still watching, you can absolutely train your flies not to sit on your paint. You just have to talk to them calmly.